17 black celebrities who had spouses die from incurable diseases. In Hollywood, the dazzling stage lights often create a golden illusion of absolute invincibility, endless wealth, untouchable power, and picture-perfect romances. But strip away that forgiving spotlight, and you will uncover closed hospital doors hiding relentless, raw agony. The true terror isn't the sudden drop of death itself, it's the excruciating wait. It's watching a silent predator slowly drain the life from your soulmate, all while fame's crushing pressure demands you smile for the cameras. Today we unravel 17 heartbreaking stories of black celebrities who stood completely helpless as terminal illnesses stole their greatest loves. Simone Boseman. In 2018, the world bowed to a powerhouse. Chadwick Boseman, under the dazzling stage lights, became an immortal icon as King T'Challa. The global box office roared, his smile projecting absolute invincibility. Yet, behind that forgiving spotlight lay an earth-shattering secret. Since 2016, a silent predator, stage 3 colorectal cancer, had been relentlessly hunting him. While millions cheered for a superhero on screen, Simone Boseman was watching her soulmate wasting away in terrifying reality. She became the solitary witness to his raw agony. Simone didn't see a majestic king. She saw a vulnerable man enduring grueling chemotherapy right between filming intense action sequences. By July 2020, the merciless foe pushed into stage 4. Inside their Los Angeles home, the golden illusion shattered entirely. No flashing cameras, only the terrifying rhythm of his labored breathing and the sterile hum of medical equipment. After 47 sleepless hours, wiping away illness and changing medical bags, Simone watched the man she loved become skeletal. Fame's crushing pressure forced them into total secrecy, an invisible punishment so the public could keep its hero intact. On August 28, 2020, the king fell silent. Simone, having secretly married him to ensure no regrets, held his fading hands until the last second. When all the millions and global worship couldn't buy a single extra heartbeat, one must ask, what is the true value of an immortal legacy if it leaves your soulmate drowning in an unfillable void? The deafening silence that swallows a room after a final breath is a devastating frequency, a pitch that would soon vibrate through the cold walls of a New York hospital, striking another devoted woman who thought 3 decades of love could outrun fate. Emmy Brabson. 3 decades of a picture-perfect family. 61 years of a celebrated life. 14 days of absolute hell. For Emmy Brabson, the descent of her husband, Andre Braugher, cannot be measured in dramatic scandals, but in the cold, terrifying mathematics of a merciless foe. The beloved Brooklyn Nine-Nine captain was a stoic powerhouse on screen, yet behind the closed doors of Mount Sinai Hospital, his golden illusion was rapidly disintegrating. On November 28, 2023, a chilling speculation became a definitive death sentence: late-stage lung cancer. Just a few months prior, Andre had been a beacon of calm strength. Now he was tethered to an oxygen tank, gasping for air, his authoritative voice reduced to a frail whisper. The sudden drop took exactly 336 hours. In those final 14 days, Emmy didn't leave his side for a single second. She watched the man she had loved since 1991 wasting away, a rapid decay that offered absolutely no time to process the raw agony unfolding before her eyes. There was no drawn-out battle, only a terrifying freefall. On December 11th, Andre's heart stopped, leaving behind 3 sons facing an unfillable void. Emmy retreated into total isolation for half a year, grieving far from the invasive tabloid fodder. She directed all tributes to the Harlem Classical Theater to honor his passion. In the cruel arithmetic of mortality, 30 years of a fiercely guarded love story were brutally subtracted by just 336 hours of suffering. A 2-week nightmare shatters the soul instantly, yet drawing out that exact same devastation over 18 agonizing months breeds a uniquely suffocating psychological torment. A haunting reality where a legendary figure orchestrates his own grand exit, forcing his protective queen to smile through the shattering of her universe. Mon. A single drop of vintage cologne clinging to a worn leather jacket. To the world, this scent belonged to a shape-shifting powerhouse, a music icon who defined an era. But to Somali supermodel Iman, that lingering fragrance is a forensic trace of a glamorous marriage ruthlessly hijacked by an invisible enemy. In 1992, their union seemed to be a golden illusion, untouchable by ordinary decay. Yet in mid-2014, chilling speculation began as the legend vanished. The sudden drop wasn't a public spectacle, it was an 18-month death sentence executed in sterile hospital rooms. Behind closed doors, the raw agony was palpable. Iman became the sole caretaker of a skeletal figure, patiently feeding him every spoonful as liver cancer acted as a silent predator. The man who captivated millions was now gasping for air in the dark. On January 10, 2016, the music permanently stopped. Thrust into a blinding storm of camera flashes, Iman faced fame's crushing pressure. The tabloid fodder demanded a weeping widow, aggressively labeling him her late husband. But she stood firm, her face a mask of stone, entirely rejecting their narrative. She retreated to a quiet apartment, clutching that leather jacket in the dark. The cold truth remains: a fading scent is merely a ghost haunting the living. A heavily guarded exit from the global stage allows a music legend to preserve his mystique until the bitter end. However, modern reality television operates on a far more parasitic frequency. The exact same lenses that construct a domestic empire refuse to blink when the household walls finally collapse, actively devouring a private medical nightmare for public consumption. Nene leaks. A perfectly curated Instagram post. A fierce reality TV powerhouse dripping in diamonds, projecting the ultimate golden illusion. But swipe past the glamorous marriage aesthetic, and the systemic blade brutally slashes through the filter, revealing an earth-shattering secret that fans never truly comprehended. Behind the towering confidence of Nene Leakes was a woman drowning in raw agony. By 2018, her husband Greg began a terrifying descent, trapped by a silent predator, colorectal cancer. The sudden drop wasn't documented in high-definition confessional interviews. It unfolded inside a suffocating bedroom. The woman known for her dazzling stage lights was stripped down to a trembling wife, changing foul-smelling surgical dressings while her soulmate lay skeletal and gasping for air. Fame's crushing pressure demands that stars process their death sentences publicly, reducing genuine heartbreak to tabloid fodder. When Greg succumbed, Nene posted a single, shattering word: broken. Ultimately, millions of followers cannot stitch a shattered heart back together, proving that audiences actually know absolutely nothing about the agonizing reality their idols endure. A single word can barely encapsulate such destruction, yet sometimes the most catastrophic news is delivered not via social media, but through a cold text message right as a performer steps into the limelight. James Earl Jones. The leather gloves rested quietly in the trembling hands of a legend, becoming witnesses to the moment the sky fell. For over 30 years, they had warmed Cecilia Hart's hands as she and James Earl Jones walked from the heights of glory to a quiet life. But on the morning of October 10, 2016, backstage at the Play Jing game, a chilling message triggered a sudden drop. Ovarian cancer, a silent predator, had reached its end. James, the man with the most powerful voice in Hollywood, was now just a silent man, leaning against the cold wall of Mount Sinai Hospital. The leather gloves seemed to sense the chill of death spreading, as he hesitated to open the hospital room door immediately. Inside, his beloved wife lay gasping for breath in raw agony, her body so weak she could barely lift herself from her bed. 6 days later, Cecilia passed away. The gloves were forever devoid of their owner's warmth. Just 3 weeks later, James returned to the dazzling stage lights, but his familiar seat in the audience was now an unfillable void. The audience still heard his powerful voice, but they didn't know that each time he paused before speaking, he was waiting for a sound that would never be heard again. The silence of the empty seat, like those lifeless gloves, was a cruel testament to a love torn apart by death. The fragility of human life often lurks behind inanimate objects, and sometimes, the greatest tragedy suffocates the heart right behind the doors of a bustling bar. Valerie Simpson. Step into the bustling Sugar Bar in New York on the night of August 10, 2011. Dazzling stage lights, boisterous laughter, and loud music create a perfect illusion. You are a guest immersed in the entertainment world of the Motown duo, unaware that behind the slightly ajar door lies a shocking secret. Cruel throat cancer has completely robbed Nick Ashford of his legendary voice. From the corner of the bar, you see Valerie Simpson repeatedly wiping glasses listlessly. Raw agony is evident in her eyes whenever she glances through the glass. Nick lies there, gasping for air through a breathing tube, his body wasting away, yet he still manages to give his wife a thumbs up in encouragement. The devastating sudden drop came just 12 days later when he passed away. The stool next to the microphone, now permanently empty, became an unfillable void, reminding us that even the most powerful figures are powerless in silent despair when the last light goes out. No matter how poignant the melodies, they cannot mend a broken soul, just as a fortress of peace that had stood for over 4 decades can be hollowed out before collapsing completely at the feet of a woman who had always struggled to protect a turbulent family. Rebby Jackson. On the morning of January 3, 2013, the atmosphere in Encino was heavy, marking the collapse of a picture-perfect family. The clatter of a telephone falling to the floor shattered the walls of repression. Rebby Jackson, the calm eldest sister of a powerful Hollywood family, collapsed in tears beside her hospital bed. Nathaniel Brown, her husband of 44 years, lay unconscious, his labored breathing and dull eyes no longer able to perceive anything. Going back to 1968, when this glamorous marriage began, Nathaniel paid no heed to the dazzling stage lights. He chose to be a solid springboard for Rebby to withstand the crushing pressure of fame. But then in 2010, an invisible enemy, cancer, struck a devastating blow. His once healthy body gradually withered and degenerated into skin over bones under the ravages of this silent predator. On January 6, the death sentence was officially carried out. The great love story of 4 decades ended, leaving an unfillable void. Rebby's solitary silence at Forest Lawn Cemetery every Sunday morning proves a heartbreaking truth. No matter how illustrious one's family background, ultimately, one is powerless against the impermanence of life. However, death doesn't always slowly devour its victims in a hospital bed. Sometimes it ruthlessly snatches a life with a terrifying seizure in the back seat of a car on the highway. Al Joyner. The leather-wrapped steering wheel on Highway 405 never imagined it would become a silent witness to a horrifying revelation. In 1987, Al and Florence Joyner's marriage was a glorious illusion, where 2 of the most powerful symbols of the Olympics stood at the pinnacle of success. But the sharp blades of the media system wouldn't spare them, creating immense pressure to wear down FloJo's spirit. On the afternoon of September 19, 1998, the steering wheel was gripped so tightly it was distorted by Al's white-knuckled hands. In the back seat, FloJo writhed in raw agony, gasping for air with a violent convulsion. The metal machine sped wildly, its rotations reflecting only utter helplessness. Although he managed to save his wife's life that day, 2 days later, an invisible enemy ruthlessly carried out the death sentence while she slept. Leaving behind his glory, Al had to sell his home to protect his deceased wife's honor from public condemnation. The steering wheel, once vibrating in despair, was now the chilling silence of a machine that had lost its bearings. Sometimes, to escape the suffocating whirlwind of speed, people choose to slam on the brakes forever, abandoning the noisy highways to flee to a desolate countryside, where death doesn't scream but silently knocks on the door under the setting sun. Khalees. On March 14, 2022, a quiet estate on the outskirts of Los Angeles became the graveyard of a picture-perfect family. Mike Mora breathed his last, leaving the charismatic singer Khalees and their children alone in the fields. The invisible enemy, stage 4 stomach cancer, had delivered its death sentence. But the most heartbreaking moment wasn't in the final moments, but in the glimmer of hope that had flickered before. Returning to the moment the truth was revealed, the sudden drop, Khalees chose to escape the cold medical system. She refused to let her husband waste away under the crushing pressure of fame. They left behind the dazzling stage lights to cling to one last golden illusion. In the fading sunlight, the emaciated, skeletal Mike still managed to smile as he pushed the swing for his child. Raw agony strikes as Khalees frantically transcribes his words into her notebook, desperately trying to preserve the soul of her beloved before the silent predator snatches it all away. Then the piece shatters. A cough. Blood soaks her shirt. The vast expanse of the farm cannot buy more time. It only deepens the loneliness of those left behind. And as that cry fades into the darkness, across the country, a deafening explosion of fireworks illuminates the utter helplessness of a powerful man before the grim reaper. John Lewis. A powerful congressman, a symbol of courage who once faced violence to change American history, was utterly powerless in the face of the sudden drop in his own home. On the night of December 31, 2012, as fireworks illuminated Atlanta like a golden illusion welcoming the new year, John Lewis's Great Wall crumbled. In the dark room, his wife of 45 years, Lillian Miles, was dying. She gasped for air through a lifeless ventilator, succumbing to a silent predator. Facing raw agony, the man who had once moved mountains now trembled, frantically clutching his wife's hand, afraid to let go even for a second. What meaning did his vast legacy have if his ultimate power couldn't buy his life partner another breath of life? That ultimate helplessness is precisely what surrounds the women behind the curtain of the nation's highest power, where they are forced to conceal their personal breakdown to protect the dignity of a great figure until the very last moment. Graca Machel. The world is cruel, demanding that great men belong to the public until their last breath. Under the crushing pressure of fame, Nelson Mandela's final days nearly became a public spectacle. However, Graca Machel resolutely stopped that cruel blade to protect the golden illusion of her husband's dignity. In December 2013, the truth suddenly dropped. The symbol of power was now gasping for air. Facing raw agony, she shut off all news, silently wiping away his sweat and caring for him in absolute silence until the death sentence closed everything on December 5. Protecting a loved one by carefully concealing them from the world's gaze is a heartbreaking instinct. But in another corner of history, there were wives who were forced to bravely raise their glasses, personally preserving the last fading moments before eternal darkness swallowed their lives. Jean Mutusamiash. The mechanical camera in Jean's hand seemed to sense its heavy lens. It had witnessed the glorious illusion of Arthur Ashe shining like an invincible symbol of power. But then the sudden drop came, a tragic blood transfusion planting the silent predator HIV into his body. The camera shuddered as it had to record a cruel death sentence. On the night of February 4, 1993, the lens blurred from Jean's hot tears. Through that lens, the raw agony was clearly visible on his frail body gasping for air. Despite the relentless pressure from the media, she steadfastly pressed the shutter, sealing the moment of her husband's life and death. As Arthur breathed his last, the shutter clicked once and then faded away. The lifeless machine now fell into a cold silence, forever imprisoning the soul of a legend. The pain of losing a life partner was already heartbreaking, but the tragedy would become even more suffocating when the faint sound of the heart monitor was drowned out by relentless debt collection calls directed at the dying man. Alto Vice Davis. The systemic blade never shows mercy. In 1990 in Beverly Hills, the Davis family's golden illusion shattered. Icon Sammy Davis Jr. was gasping for air, battling terminal throat cancer. Alto Vice sat there, one hand holding her husband's, the other trembling as she clutched their tax records. A $7 million debt hung over them like a second death sentence. Raw agony gripped her as she watched her partner wasting away amidst the incessant ringing of the telephone. Creditors, silent predators, relentlessly demanded payment from a dying man. He died on May 16. The crushing pressure of fame deprives the widow of even the right to weep. The ultimate price of glory is utter destitution, with her mansion and all her memorabilia sold off at auction. If enormous debt is a cruel final blow at the moment of death, then sometimes, a faded will is the spark that ignites the last vestiges of dignity left after a great man closes his eyes. Glodian White. The thin, yellowed will trembled in Glodian's hand in the silent living room. This small piece of paper tore apart the glorious illusion of her illustrious marriage to Barry White. Despite years of separation, she remained his legal wife. In 2003, when a serious illness claimed his life, the sudden drop ignited a Cold War. The systemic blade struck relentlessly. Hostility from her stepson and bitter accusations turned her into tabloid fodder. The raw agony of loss was crushed by the ruthless courtroom battles. The empty room became a chilling testament to the human heart when glory fades. Greed tears apart heartless wills, but sometimes, the cruelest document of all is the tear-soaked notebook recording the dying breaths of a life partner on the brink of death. Chanel Jones. Every morning, millions of American viewers tune into the Today Show to be greeted by Chanel's radiant smile. It's the perfect golden illusion. But behind the dazzling stage lights, the truth shatters when her husband receives a devastating death sentence from brain cancer. The silent predator ravages him daily. At home, the image of the powerful TV host vanishes, giving way to raw agony. Her notebook, detailing her husband's deteriorating symptoms, becomes proof of her helplessness. Only when he dies do the public realize the broken heart behind that smile. Ultimately, the audience never truly understood the tears of their idol. Away from the deceptive screen, the sun-drenched courtyard in Los Angeles holds an unfulfilled last wish, where vibrant roses bloom to bid farewell to his final breath. CCH Pounder. Standing in the Boribana Museum in Senegal, the powerful actress CCH Pounder quietly arranges each exhibit in solitude. To understand this figure, one must return to the garden in Los Angeles, where the golden illusion of Hollywood is cast aside. The sudden drop unfolds with heartbreaking silence. Her husband gasps for air due to a terminal illness. Refusing the cold hospital, she brings him home to care for him. Raw agony is evident as he weakly gazes at the unfinished museum project. A week later, the death sentence arrives. She single-handedly carries her husband's legacy to completion in Africa. Fame ultimately means nothing. The only eternal thing is love. Nevertheless, being able to say goodbye to a loved one at home is still a privilege, because there are unfortunate souls who have to weep bitterly as they bid farewell to their soulmate through a lifeless computer screen. Leonard Reed. The glowing computer screen in a suffocating Los Angeles apartment never expected to serve as a digital graveyard. It was December 2020, and the world was locked down by a global pandemic. But for Leonard Reed, the true invisible enemy wasn't outside. It was the silent predator, colorectal cancer, ravaging his wife, Natalie Desselle Reed, right in their living room. The woman whose boundless energy once created a golden illusion on screen was now wasting away on a makeshift hospital bed. The sudden drop forced Leonard into an agonizing survival strategy. With hospitals restricting visitors, he became a self-taught nurse, meticulously adjusting 4 lines behind a stifling mask, desperate to keep her gasping for air just a little longer. He held her skeletal hand, feeling the raw agony as her heartbeat faded. On December 7th, her death sentence was executed. Fame's crushing pressure often dictates grand public mourning, but the systemic blade of the pandemic forced an invisible punishment. The computer screen flickered with a grid of weeping faces, a virtual funeral for a powerhouse who loved being surrounded by crowds. When the calls finally ended, the monitor went completely black, leaving Leonard staring at his own empty reflection, trapped in an unfillable void where a picture-perfect family used to be. 17 towering icons, 17 shattered illusions. Behind the dazzling stage lights, these stories prove that fame's crushing pressure and limitless wealth cannot bribe the silent predator. When the final curtain falls, the golden illusion dissolves, leaving behind an earth-shattering secret. We are all utterly powerless against mortality. The raw agony of watching a soulmate fade is an invisible punishment that spares no one. So, cherish your loved ones today before they become mere memories. If these heartbreaking journeys moved you, drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more. Because Hollywood's darkest tragedies are never scripted.